Welcome to another episode of On the Issues with Alon Ben-Meir. Today's guest is Milica Javdan, a political scientist and activist in the Iranian opposition's women's movement. In this episode, Alon and Milica discuss what work the Iranian opposition is undertaking, both inside and outside Iran, the impact of Israeli and U.S. attacks on Iran and how that impacts the relationship of the Iranian people with the regime, and the prospect of regime change in Iran.
Good morning, Abhishek. Again, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to discuss this extremely, in my view, extremely important subject, which is Iran's today. And I know you have been involved for many, many years in the resistance movement, and your father, in fact, sacrificed himself for the cause of the Iranian people and for the cause of liberty and freedom. So I'd like first to ask you, where are you now? What are you doing in your continuing effort and campaign to liberate the Iranian people from this oppressive regime?
Thank you for having me, and thank you for giving me, an Iranian woman, a woman of the Iranian resistance, the opportunity to speak about the women-led movement in Iran against the current dictatorship. What I personally am involved with is mostly the United Nations. It's a global umbrella organization, Women's Human Rights International Association. And it has a COSAC status, like consultative status in the UN, and it has branches and networks all over Europe and in the United States. And there are like Iranian women's movements, for instance, in Norway, where I reside. I'm the chairwoman of the Norwegian Iranian Women's Network in Norway, which is part of the Women's Human Rights International Association. So I participate at the UN Human Rights Sessions. I've been doing so for 12 years, and we follow all the discussions there, and we voice the need of the women of Iran. And we believe that there is this current regime, however it shifts and changes, there will be no substantial changes within this current regime that would bring about a free election within this current mullah's regime. That's just not a possibility. So we advocate for the people of Iran, for their rights, but also for their organized resistance. The fact that we believe this regime is an ideological occupational power. It has its own army, the Iran Revolutionary Guards. That is the army of an occupational regime, the occupation being ideological. And it has a grip on power in Iran and used in suppressive means to oppress the women of Iran, oppress the entirety of the population. And because of that, it is of utmost importance that those who are the most oppressed, those who are belonging to ethnic minorities, those who are women, those who are most oppressed in the current regime are the ones that are giving much more of a voice within the Iranian resistance. That's why the women movement in the Iranian resistance is so strong. That's why we participate in international media as well. I mean, for instance...
Yes, I'm sorry to interrupt you. That is, I mean, I follow events of Iran. I haven't really heard much about the movement as such. I mean, I know its existence, but I didn't see much in terms of coverage, say in the media. What is this the council, is doing, and which are very much working very hard with it and playing such a significant role. Why is it not well known that
That's a very good question, and I would very much like to answer it. The problem is the Iranian regime has over 40 years, like 4 decades, they have been targeting the Iranian resistance because they do believe the Iranian resistance with the NCRI, National Council of Resistance, which is an umbrella and organization, a kind of a parliament in exile, whereas the Mujahideen movement is the strongest, best organized organization within that parliament in exile. So what the Iranian regime has been doing is that throughout the last 4 decades, they have been trying to tarnish the real alternative to their current regime.
Yeah, so but what is the counter? What is the counter argument here? Many Why is it we are not hearing? Of course, the Iranian regime is doing everything it can in order to suppress these voices, to silence these voices. But you have the situation, you have the National Council of Resistance, and of course, you have the Mujahideen. Where there is a headquarters that is operating from the United Nations, that's one thing. What are the Mujahideen? Where do they exist? What they are doing?
Oh, the Mujahideen are not headquarters at the United Nations. There are actually.
I understand that. Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
But where are they operating from? Are they still operating?
They're operating in the diplomatic branch of the NCRI is in Paris. It's headed by Mrs. Mariam Rajavi, and the body of the organization of the Mujahideen organization is in Albania. It's outside of Tirana. They have their own camp, and they are in contact with the networks movement because the body of organization, its members are in exile, are in Albania, and the diplomatic branch is headquartered in Paris. But the most of the sympathizers are in Iran, resistance unit in Iran.
That's okay, so this movement in Iran, are they in contact, obviously, with the organization outside Iran?
Yeah.
But what sort of activities they have undertaken in Iran itself? What have they done recently, in recent months, before the war? What they have done? What are they doing?
They show actually that what they're doing is to bring to the people their main goal. Let's put it that way. Their main goal is to keep the resistance strong within the people of Iran, knowing that this regime
how are they doing
that total. And what they're doing is by, for instance, cocktail Molotovs. They use cocktail Molotovs. They burn down a building with nobody in it. Let's just make sure of that. It happens during night, so there are no death or casualties in that manner. But throwing cocktail Molotovs and filming it and putting it up on social media, that's one way of doing. There are sometimes there are banners. They're hanging banners with their message of the Iranian resistance all over cities and towns in Iran. They're doing that as well with the pictures of the Iranian resistance movement, leaders of the Iranian resistance, with those the pictures of those falling for freedom. And but that's one part of the work they're doing. And then there are networks within Iran that are not directly associated with this network, but there are networks of resistance in Iran. Some of them hack. I'm sure you know about this. Hack ministries of Iran. And then they put out a lot of information that has been kept hidden within the ministries, and put it out on the internet for anybody who would like to know more about it to dig into it and know more about the purpose of the regime.
And if you try to quantify that in terms of how much they have been able to influence the Iranian public, what kind of reaction are you getting from the Iranian public? I mean, they are operating this way, they're sabotaging, they use violence, albeit that they try to do everything they can not to have people killed in the process. So they're doing all of this. But do we have, because I'm not hearing, for example, how the Iranian people are reacting to this particular action of the Mujahideen at this point?
Well, actually, the fact that the resistance units are growing in numbers, and we know this because of the acts that they do. The acts that they do, they put it up, and you can just count them, and you can tell that they are growing and growing and growing. And they don't come from the outside of the country; they come from within the country. So, that's one way to measure the response of the people of Iran. The fact that the resistance units are growing. That's one that I would say the best way to measure it. And the fact that, if I may, we would. This is not guerrilla warfare, or where we are like promoting some kind of warfare within Iran. This is not it. This is keeping the hope and the belief in a coming revolution alive within the people of Iran. And you don't do that. You don't do that, and you will not succeed if there is no will within the population itself. Well, we do see acts of resistance, for instance, be it different kinds of acts of resistance. I'm trying to figure the word in English. There are rallies, there are people out on strike, and there have been on several occasions, widespread uprising within Iran. And these two, I mean, the Iranian regime themselves have admitted to it in their newspapers that these are fueled and kept alive. They're spontaneous by the people of Iran. Those widespread uprising are spontaneous, but they're kept alive by the Iranian resistance movements, those units within Iran, by the Mujahideen.
So basically, their function is to create awareness.
Exactly.
Awareness by the various activities that they have taken in order to keep the momentum within Iran. Now, let me now start where we are today and then take you back to where you are. Yes, and that is, the conflict between Israel and Iran, because that is going to, now they're talking a great deal about regime change and how and should regime change should be precipitated. Now, from your perspective, Israel has been, Netanyahu in particular, been itching for years now to try to attack Iran nuclear programs. And finally, he was able to do that. We do not know really to the extent to which these facilities have been damaged. Trump used the word obliterate. Nobody believes that. So today, the negotiations have been stalled. The Iranian claimed victory only because the United States allowed Iran to have the last shot and without responding. So as a matter of fact, I followed this very carefully. I've been investigating. This has been done deliberately. I knew that was coming. That is, even Iran, as you well know, notified the United States in advance. We're going to shoot, or we don't want anyone to get killed, in order to make sure that the United States does not respond. So they'll have the last word, so to speak, the last shot, in order to claim victory, which is exactly what they have done. So we don't know the extent of the damage. The focus I want to talk to you about is that, to what extent now, from if you were to evaluate all the events as of today, impacted the strength of the regime in Iran, whether this made it stronger or they make it weaker. That is, these attacks, and how the public is reacting to it from your perspective.
From my perspective, there is no scenario where the Iranian people would rally behind the mullah's regime during this conflict or afterwards of this conflict. I'm not sure if it's really over yet. I don't see that happening. They will not be rallying around the regime. But what they do not appreciate is being bombed. The Iranian people do not appreciate foreign interventions and regime change by foreign powers, be it Israel, United States, or whatever power. The Iranian people do have an organized resistance movement, and they are capable and they are willing to change their regime, bring about regime change by their own organized resistance. There is no need for bombing civilians or civilian infrastructure or what for that to bring about that change. And our Iranian people do not appreciate it. But there is a truth to the fact that the Iranian regime has been weakened. There is no debate about that in my view, because when you attack, there are targeted attacks against the military facilities, against the militia, paramilitias, the Basij and the Revolutionary Guards. Of course, they will be weakened. And
if I may, they have been obviously weakened militarily because Israel attacked a military installation, decapitated de facto several top generals. The nuclear scientists. So in that regard, definitely the Iranian regime has been weakened. But from what I'm looking at now, and exactly what you said is right. The Iranian people do not want to see a foreign power to come and bomb the country. Specifically, I'm told there's more than 700 Iranians were killed as a result of the Israeli bombing, not the American bombing, for that matter.
No
And
killing for that
although,
matter.
yeah, and although the Iranian as people, going back, Jews and Persian going back more than 2,000
Thousands
years,
of years.
they
Yes.
had in fact, they were very close to one another. They were operated, put together. So the Iranian people in general do not have any animosity against the Jews or against Israel.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
to what
Absolutely
extent
agree.
now, to what extent now Israel attack that resulted in the death of 700 Iranian, maybe even more, and a lot more injured. Has that impacted the mindset of the Iranian people toward Israel? Because now they are rallying behind the flag in terms of, even though they despise the regime and they would like to see a regime change, but now having been attacked by foreign power and have so many casualties have occurred, they are rallying. As a matter of fact, based on what I'm seeing, they are not talking against the regime, but they are rallying around the regime because the regime now stood up
No,
for
I
the.
agree with
Well,
you
I mean,
respectfully, if I
this
may.
is what I'm saying is there was no outcry about what the regime is doing, but there was concern, exactly what you're saying, an outcry about being bound by foreign power. That's what
Hmm.
when I see that distinction has taken
Hmm.
place. What do you comment on that?
Actually, what you see when I mean, there are footages of demonstrations and rallies in Iran burying the dead of both civilians and revolutionary guards. But the truth of the matter is that the regime is pushing for this narrative. They're pushing for a narrative that would showcase some kind of resentment amongst the Iranian people against the Jewish state. That is not true. I do not believe that personally a second to be true. The Iranian people, in general, do have sympathy for the cause of the Palestinian cause, yes, but they do not want to be, and there has never been amongst the people of Iran, to distinguish from the regime, animosity against the Jewish people. I personally, I'm from Shiraz, the city of where Cyrus the Great is buried, and there are Jews in where I'm from. That's just common.
No, but I'm not talking about Jews. No, the Iranian people do not have anti-Jewish or anti-Semitism streak on them. I know that. I'm just talking about having Israel cause these casualties. Do you sense any anti-Israel sentiment in that regard? Because saying they don't want to be bombed by a foreign power specifically. And do you see any kind of anti-Israel sentiment?
I don't believe I do.
Post these bombing.
Actually, from my perspective, no. As I mentioned earlier, the Iranian people do have sympathy for the cause, for the Palestinian cause, but the Iranian regime, as in the last decades, have been involved by proxies boosting, terror and terrorists within Israel. So the Iranian people have had enough animosity towards Israel. They just don't want to get involved in that conflict to
Yeah,
a
no, I
greater
understand
measure
that.
than
I
already.
understand that. I'm just talking, post-Israeli attack, if there is any anti-Israel sentiment, like because you said, many people were killed as a result of the Israeli bombardment of civilian, building in the middle of Tehran, where these generals were living, where these scientists were living, and with them, so many innocent civilians being also killed. But let's leave that for a moment. Now let's look at the situation today. If you were to ask the question, where do we go from here? If the member of the Trump administration said to you, okay, this is where we are today. We destroyed, we don't know the extent of the destruction of the nuclear program. And obviously Iran is Iran, no matter what the United States does, no matter what Israel does. Iran is a powerful country. It is located in the most critical geostrategic area. It has massive human and natural resources. It has a very rich culture going back thousands of years. This is a major power that is in the Middle East. And unfortunately, is being misguided by this current leadership. So Iran, no matter how much United States and Israel hammer on Iran is going to be there, and the United States and Israel will have to deal with Iran. But right now, this regime is still in power. How do you think you can bring about a change? Let me just qualify that for a moment. When you say this, of course, there's this movement, resistant movement in Iran, and there's the outside as well, operating in order to weaken, to the regime. So what other means? Now, the United States would like to resume the negotiation, for example, with this current regime about a nuclear program. So what is going to bring a change specifically, and I agree with you 100%, that the change will have to come from within. That is, neither the United States or Israel or any other power can, in fact, precipitate the collapse of this regime. Because if they do, this is not the Iranians doing it. And you mentioned, you talked about the Mossad government. That is, the United States, the CIA precipitated the collapse of the Mossad government. What did we inherit after that? The United States got involved in Iraq. What did we inherit after Iraq? So affecting a regime change from the outside did not work in Vietnam, did not work in Iraq, did not work in Afghanistan, and certainly would not work in Iran. No. So how do we now, given what we have, the internal combustion that taking place and the external pressure that taking place, and the notion that the United States would like to reach an agreement on the Iranian nuclear program. I have some ideas I want to discuss with you, but where do you see a change that's powerful enough in order to affect regime change?
Well, I believe there's a third option, and please let me elaborate a bit about that.
Of course.
Because what the Americans have done, they have negotiated before. I mean, the Comprehensive Plan of Action, that was a round of negotiations by the Obama administration, but that kind of negotiation is based on a premises that there will be a change in behavior within this regime. I mean, the goal was never regime change for the Obama administration. It was negotiating a change in behavior within the Iranian regime so that it may not constitute a threat to Western powers. It has always been a threat to the stability in the Middle East and to its own people. That's just goes without saying. And what they were solely focused on, unfortunately, was the nuclear threat of Iran. In my view, the threat of this regime, the biggest threat posed to stability and in the region and world peace does not come from the nuclear ambitions of this regime. And please I have to elaborate a little bit about that. The greatest threat from this regime is its proxies, is the spread of ideology and financial support of its proxies of terror in the Middle East. And unfortunately, the Obama administration, when they negotiated with the regime, they did not put its ballistic missile program or its support to proxies on the negotiation table. That was just off the table, more or less. And the main focus was the nuclear threat. I personally, as an Iranian, as a political scientist, believe that was a mistake, a grave mistake that have led us to where we are today, because the proxies are the ones who create instability, and they were the ones that threaten the regime change from within, because a nuclear power.
But let me just stop you for a second. These proxies, for example, let's talk about Hezbollah, yes. Islamic Jihad, the militia in Iraq, including Hamas, is pretty much almost obliterated. Now these proxies have been weakened dramatically, and so the Iran was counting on them to come to its aid should be attacked by Israel, by the United States. When it was attacked, there was no Hezbollah, there was no Hamas, no Islamic Jihad. Nobody came to Iran. So these proxies now vanished, at least for the foreseeable future. They do not exist.
Yeah, that's the problem. They have not vanished. They have not vanished. They're still there.
They are there as a movement. No, they are there as an ideological movement. I agree with you. But in terms of ability to operate, to support Iran, campaign now, they are not able to do so. Nor does Iran has the means, nor has the means to rebuild these organizations, at least not for the foreseeable future. So we have to take that into consideration, because you are alluding to something I agree with, and I want to come back to this for a moment. When you say it was a mistake by the Obama administration, I agree with you 100%, and I agree with you that even the current administration, the Biden administration following, and the Trump administration, the first term now, which canceled the Obama deal.
Yeah.
What the focus, and I agree with you here, and I'm going to elaborate on that, because I would like to advance a new notion, new ideas in terms of, and check it with you. because we are very close to the scene. So to focus only on the nuclear program, to the exclusion of other issues, and that's what is the Iranian government is concerned about, is interested about, is fearful of, that was not touched. My feeling, what I've been saying for years and years, including during the Obama administration, while you're focusing on the nuclear program, which is important, you have also to deal with other issues in order either to bring about the collapse of the regime, that is from not the outside, but from the inside, or deal with these conflicting issues. For example, they're supporting the Palestinians. Well, in my view, if you work on a solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, you could pull the rug from underneath Iran to some extent.
Yes.
They are dealing with nuclear weapon. That is, Israel has a nuclear weapon. Obviously, they want to create a deterrent. How do you deal with that? Which means if you were to deal with the outside issues other than the nuclear program, you can then mitigate, because when you talk about behavior, that is what I'm talking about. You're absolutely right. They need to change their behavior, but their behavior they won't change as long as they feel threatened by Israel and the United States. So where do we go from here in order to change their behavior, given the recent most development in the last few weeks?
Quite honestly, I don't believe there is any room for change in behavior in this regime that is substantial, that might actually, bring about some kind of a stability in the Middle East. As long as the regime is in power, the mullahs regime and their ideology is in power, there will be no stability in the Middle East, and there will be no substantial change in behavior. So I don't believe that to be a possibility at all. I believe there is only one answer to that, to a change in behavior, and that is a change in the regime. That's my personal view.
But how do you bring about a change of regime?
Exactly.
How do you bring about a change of regime? We don't want external power to do that. We want internal. How do you get? Well, again, the regime has existed now since 1979, so you have nearly 50 years now. The question is, how do you bring about a change? Your organization, the one you're working with, both supporting the internal Mujahideen movement, supporting the outside, the council as well. And it's bearing some fruit. But given how repressive this regime is, how do you, again, what is going to take more than has been taken place in order to effect such a change? That's what I want to focus on from your perspective. What more can be done? I'm not questioning
recognize the right of the people of Iran. Recognize the right of the people of Iran to an organized resistance movement against this tyranny.
But who is going to do that? And how they're going to go about it? When the Iranian regime, they arrest anyone who is talking about the regime, when they are any criticism of the regime, that person ends up being in jail. So how do you bring this about?
We've been through this. The people of Iran, I'm sorry for interrupting you. I'm just too eager.
No. This is what we want. We want a discussion. We don't want, like I said before, you interrupt me, I interrupt you. It's perfectly okay.
Thank you for that. The fact is that the people of Iran, the people of Iran have an organized resistance. There is an alternative to the current regime. So there will be no substantial change in the behavior of this regime. There will only be a change when there is a regime change. So how do we go about to make that happen? The United States is not to bring about regime change in Iran. Neither is Israel and nobody else but the people of Iran. But what can Western powers, for instance, the United States, do in support of the will of the people of Iran? Recognize our right to resist this tyranny. There is a third option, and that is no to appeasement policies, such as the comprehensive plan of action, the Obama deal, which was just not good enough, which is not addressed.
When you say resisting, by the United States supports the United States supports any kind of resistance to the regime from within. But for example, let me just say, well, I mean, what else can they say other than they're not stopping them?
dialogue, they don't. Here's what we see. They are negotiating, and well, it's behind the scenes to a certain extent. They're trying to negotiate with the current regime. There's just no formal negotiations as of now. But what about the dialogue? Opening up the dialogue for the resistance movement. Why is there dialogue?
Well, then you open the dialogue with the resistance movement if it's going to be formal dialogue, whether the regime is not going to negotiate with the United States about anything else, including nuclear program. What is missing, in my view, when you talk about resistance movement? Most countries in the state, like if you go historically speaking, and you are a political scientist, there is a shadow government, for example, being established outside Iran. What do we have now? The son of the Shah. Who is he? Who he wants to go back? What he wanted back to be a king? Well, Iran wasn't exactly a wonderful, free country under the Shah of Iran either.
It was a dictatorship.
So what I'm saying is, part of the resistance movement, in my view, would require to form a shadow government outside Iran.
Shadow government. That's the answer.
Where is it? No, you should. No. I'm talking about you have a minister of Interior, the Minister of Defense, a shadow government.
We do not dictate to the people of Iran who will be their next.
No, we are not. No, wait a second. I'm not dictating. We're not dictating anyone. From our, Alicia, from my experience, when you talk about resistance, this government doesn't have to be elected government as long as it is speaking on behalf and in favor of the Iranian people. But it's the shadow government. So that is, if it's a shadow government, then it can threaten existing government. Then the international community will be talking to this organization. Cannot talk to Iranian people inside. Why? What do you have against the establishment of? Let me just ask you, what do you have against the establishment of a shadow government that is going to be a government with all the ministers, with all that have the expertise about Iran, not just ordinary people with expertise from the defense.
We do have that. We have committees in NCRI.
But you don't have a government, shadow government. You have individuals. Look, if I was part of this movement, I would push for creating a government, shadow government, to challenge the current regime, a formal government that can challenge and can express its views to the Iranian people, what this shadow government would do if it were to assume power. You see, what I think what you're missing in this movement.
We do have a plan, and we do have a platform. We do have a vision for Iran.
No, I am not talking about have this platform been translated with this government, a shadow government. What we'll do, reach out to them from the outside world, especially because of the social media. What is this? You're talking about platform. I think it's very important for any government to have shadow government or real government, to have a platform. If you have such a government that is going to promote what they will do in terms of defense, what will do in terms of in domestic development, what they will do in terms of healthcare, what they will do in terms of education, what they will do about the freedom of the press. If you have such a body, I just want you to think of those things for a second to see, because you want to galvanize resistance within Iran. You have to give it, in my view, a picture. So the Iranian will see, here is a government, would-be government, is going to do this and this and this and this and that. They will relate to a body. What you're doing is now they are relating to a movement.
Movement. In my view, that wouldn't be as democratic as we have to respect the will of the people of Iran. And
and historically speaking, the shadow government is not a democratic. Shadow government is people. Please, let me just say, shadow government usually is composed of people who are known for their integrity, for their professionalism, for their unbiased position on various issues, that are respected, and you have to have tons of many Iranian people in various professions who are extremely respected by living in Paris, living in France, living in England, living in the United States, living everywhere. These are the people. So it's not a question of electing a government through election. We're talking about a government that's, this movement that you have now, this movement outside, should be thinking in terms of, I mean, again, this is my view. You can, of course, disagree with me. Should be thinking in terms of having such a body of people, of Iranian with integrity, with the professionalism that can say, advocate the platform that you want to advocate. So the Iranian people will see a picture, what a new government can do. That is going to galvanize more forces within Iran itself. I mean, I'm talking from experience in terms of, we've seen this many times before. You need that entity. You create an entity. You have a movement, which is great and necessary. But the movement needs to create a photo, a face. That face ought to be, what? But you don't have
that. The Mariam Rajavi is the face of the resistance.
No,
it's a woman leader, and the chairman of the different committees of NCRI do function as shadow ministers.
You see, but this is a widespread. They don't have a
leader. Because it's pluralistic.
It should be pluralistic. But a government, United States, any democracy is pluralistic, is a democracy, but it's a government. There's a government. Since you cannot elect it, but again, since you cannot elect it.
If I may.
No, but let me just finish my thought, because it's very important, because I'm looking at what can help the Iranian people. That's, to me, I'm as devoted, I don't want to say more than you are, but I'm certainly devoted to the liberation of Iran. That's, I mean, this has been my work. I mean, I focus on, to me, human rights issues is first, second, third, and fourth. This is my entire preoccupation. All my life, all my adult life. This is for me. And if you follow my Facebook, you can see what I am all about. So what I'm saying to you, and I just want you to think on those terms, because you are a significant member of this movement. You have a voice. And I want you to think, you have a movement with a platform to unseat, to bring about a change of regime from within Iran, to bring about a change of regime, which is necessary, crucial. This movement has been operating and succeeding. What, in my view, is needed is a body. I just want you to think, test that with your colleagues.
I will. Definitely.
A body that the Iranian can see what this shadow government will do if and when they assume power. And promote the platform in that you have the most incredible, nowadays we have this incredible social media that they can spread no matter how often and how much the government in Iran censors social media and try to prevent the people from looking, they are exposed to social media in one form or another. If you get this kind of government, please, I wanted to check it, because I'd love to talk to you about it subsequently. Check it with your people. Create that image. That image. They can be sitting in New York, they can be sitting in France, they can be sitting in any country. That image, project that image to the Iranian people. They're going to look, oh, this is the kind of government. That's going to be a challenge to the government, to the current regime. There's a body, not the movement. The movement is supportive of this government, shadow government, but that's going to be a body that the Iranian regime is going to look at and be fearful of. Look what they're offering. That's what I'm trying to tell you about. But go ahead, please. I don't mean to do a dialogue, a monologue, but please go ahead.
Your suggestions are actually very interesting, and I will definitely talk to my colleagues about it and bring that back your message. But what I am, in my understanding as a political scientist from Iran, is the fact that the people of Iran, first of all, NCRI does have an elected president, that is Mariam Rajavi. So within a 2-year period, she will bring about a constitutional assembly, set in motion a constitutional assembly who would revise the constitution of Iran to a democratic one. And then there will be an election based on the constitution, on the new constitution, and then there will be democratic pluralistic elections for a democratic republic in Iran. That's the plan of action for the Iranian resistance movement, for the NCRI. And as of today, we do have chair people of the different committees on Iran different committees within the NCRI who do function. I wouldn't call them shadow ministers because they don't have that title, so to speak, but they do have expertise within their respective fields. For instance, there is a committee on foreign affairs. Mohammad Mohaddesin is the chair of that committee, and he functions more or less as a foreign minister for the NCRI. So those it does. There are something similar to what you're alluding to, but what I do note is that the Iranian people, unfortunately, will not perceive that the way you're perceiving it.
We don't know. Wait, we don't know that. We don't know that.
Exactly. This is
what I am
guesswork
saying
from my side. This
we
is
don't know
guesswork,
that. We don't know. You have everything. All this that you mentioned is fine and accurate and necessary, and I have no problem with that. What I am trying to suggest here, you have the lady you mentioned who was a leader. What's her name again? I'm sorry, I forgot.
Mariam Rajavi.
Majad is. She has a voice. Everybody respects her. Imagine. Do you have a direct contact with her?
I'm not directly myself, but I do see her from time to time. Yes.
Well, I mean, why don't you balance this with her? She could be the spearhead of doing something of this magnitude. Because again, I can tell you from 40, 50 years experience in this field, if you create an image like this, that would be the most challenging image that you see, a shadow government is shadow government that is going to challenge existing government. If the people can see that, here are the people, as long as every member of this government, earned the highest level of the best reputation, people with integrity, professionalism, no one can doubt about where they stand on any given issue. There are hundreds, thousands and thousands of such incredible Iranian. I mean, Iranian society is an extremely intelligent, extremely advanced society compared to the rest of the Arab world, by far ahead of any of the Arab states in terms of culture and education and all of that. So you have so many millions and millions of talented people. So I want you just to think in this, but let's leave it because I want to just cover another area. But I would like you to test it with your colleagues, and please would have another conversation in this form or in any other format to see what reaction you're getting.
I will love to.
Let us now assume not assume, I think the negotiation about Iran nuclear program is going to resume in one form or another.
Yes, it will, probably.
Potentially, Iran may be a little bit more amenable. I suggested a number of articles what to do, whether about its right, so to speak, to enrich uranium on its own. That is something categorical the United States doesn't want. They want it. And I think they can even reach an agreement on this issue eventually, because Iran does not want a war with the United States.
Yes,
they know one thing: a war with the United States, that means regime change. And this is something they don't want under any circumstances. So there will be a negotiation about the nuclear program. But my feeling is that if that is to stand alone, that's not going to solve the problem with Iran as a country. That is the conflict, for example, between Israel and Iran, between what Iran is doing in the neighborhood. It's bullying. It's been bullying. Now it's going to be less of a bully because of the being clambered by Israel and the United States. It's going to take a while for Iran to recover from this horrific loss that they have sustained, both in terms of military losses and reputation loss. In terms of reputation of the image of the mullah today is not as it used to be even 3 weeks ago. Yes. So in addition to this negotiation, which in my view going to take place, what other negotiation behind the scene should take place? I suggested they start talking about normalization of relationship. Do you go with that? Do you agree with that?
Normalization of relationship with Israel?
No. Between the United States, and Russia and Iran.
I don't. I mean, the whole point of a negotiation is to normalize it to some level. That is the whole point. The lifting of the sanctions. Why would otherwise Iran participate in any kind of negotiation? It is seeking lifting of the sanctions. But here's the thing. As I mentioned earlier, I do believe that the greatest threat to world stability, including to Western powers, is not a nuclear strong Iran. It's the proxies of Iran. Because
but again, you know, I mean, I think the proxies right now are really
yes,
of no consequence. Yeah, but they're no consequence, at least for the foreseeable future, that of no consequence.
I don't believe
no, I just wanted to focus on the issue that I'm raising here. I just want to, because of a time limitation. What I'm asking you, what I'm saying here, they will negotiate about the nuclear program, and part of it, there will be some relief on the section. That's going to be a given. That's going to be one of the requirements. But since this is the point I want to focus on, since the greatest fear of the current regime is regime change, and they will do almost anything to secure the longevity of the current regime. One thing that could ameliorate that concern is if there's track 2 diplomacy, where simultaneously is taking place with the negotiation about the nuclear program to talk about normalization of relations. Because if Iran's most fear, the regime is fearful about its own longevity, what will substitute that? Substitute that normalization of relationships, so that they will be no longer threatened by either the United States and Israel. I just want to hear your take on that. That is, should there be track 2 diplomacy, where a separate set of negotiations being dealt with, other than sanction relief? For example, exchange of ambassadors, for example. We're talking as far as that goes. So, see, to me, in conflict resolution, you have to think, yes, steps. You have to take steps. The nuclear program is one step. But then it has to be followed with something else in order to support any agreement on the nuclear program, so that will not be fragile. That is, normalization of relations, however it takes 10 years, 15, whatever years it would take, it will make it less and less, Iran will feel, the current regime will feel less and less threatened. And if you feel less and less threatened, would that have an impact on its domestic policy as well?
Yes, it will have an impact on its domestic policies when the Iranian regime is feeling less threatened. Unfortunately, I do believe it will crack down on the population much more.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get to. That's what I'm trying to get to. I believe personally that if the regime if the regime believes that the United States is trying to normalize relationship with it, then it means that the United States has accepted the current situation, the de facto regime, that it will not change, and there will be no regime change within the future. So but there is a threat to regime change from within Iran that will not disappear. The Iranian people's resentment towards the mullah's regime will not disappear, and it will not go away, even if the American or Israeli resentment towards this regime does. Even if they normalize their relationship with it, the Iranian people will not be normalizing their relationship with this.
But again,
so the crackdown on the people of Iran will grow. Because
this is fine, but then again, but remember, if there isn't be an agreement on a nuclear program, which probably there will be, I feel very certain there will be, and you stop at that, the regime is no longer being threatened. Who's going to threaten the regime? And if you do not create a movement that has a face, and if you do not create another track, that this regime is going to continue. That is, what you need to do is a track one-sided track of normalization. The other track is creating the movement. That is, normalization will take place when there is this kind of movement is in place. So the public will not be conflicted. They see a government that can do A, B, C, and D versus what this government. There's going to be tremendous pressure on this government to change its behavior domestically as well. And I think you agree with that. I just wanted to think about these concerns, these issues. And I would love to get your take on it. Perhaps, anytime you want, we can have a follow-up to this discussion. But please check what I suggested and to see if that is going to be received well, specifically by the current leaders. Because you need to move to stage 2 in terms of resistance, and that is, in my view, it is missing at this point.
I will bring your message and your perspective to the Iranian resistance, and let's have a follow-up and discuss it further.
Absolutely. So give it some thought.
Yes, I will, definitely. Definitely.
Again, I want to thank you so much for this discussion. And I look forward to having another discussion with you. Take good care. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode on the issues. You can find this podcast on my SoundCloud page, and stay tuned to my social media accounts for the latest analysis and announcements.